Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create your own chrome flakes using metal leaf. Now you can purchase this online, but I sometimes have a bit of trouble finding it, and I want to be able to make my own custom mix. So I'm going to be using a selection of coloured metal leaves, of which I have lying around quite often. I just have little pieces. This is also a good way to use up scraps. You can see I have a bit of scrap leaf over here. So what we're going to do is you're going to select your colours. I have copper, jade green, two different golds, one being regular and another one being this champagne gold, and a red. And this is just so that I can get kind of an autumn colour mix. There, you can see how that looks. Then you're also going to want a plastic bag to put them in. I wouldn't recommend using anything like a pot because the flakes will fly around all over the place. You want it contained in a container when you break them up. Bear in mind you can use any colour of metal leaf you want. Okay, and I'm going to be using whole pieces of leaf, but this is a great thing to do with any scrap leaf that you might have from leftover projects, so definitely keep that in mind. But you're going to take that and you're going to just pop that inside the bag, and you're just going to do it with all of your leaves. Just pop them inside the bag. And then once you've got them all in the bag, you want to have given the bag a little bit of air, and then you're just going to take that and give it a shake. And just start mushing things up, like so. And I might actually let out a little bit of that air. You want a little bit, but not too much. And just break that up. Okay, and you're going to continue doing that until all the pieces are broken up. Alright. Now, I didn't have enough flakes from the amount that I put in here to begin with, so I doubled up everything. So there's about 3 sheets of metal leaf per colour in here. And you can see that ends up with a decent amount. And it's not going to be perfectly chromy. You can see if you flatten the bag what it's going to look like. So it's up to you whether you like that effect or not. But once you're done, try to get everything into one spot, and then I have a little jar, and that is what I'm going to place these little guys into. Right, and I've got it all kind of sitting at the base over here, and I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to snip the bottom like so, so that I can kind of just tip it gently into here, hopefully. This is a bit of a messy situation. I'm gonna just do this and then I'll show you what I do afterwards. And that was a little bit of a process, but I did manage to get about 1.5 jars worth of this powder, and it just was a little bit of coaxing to kind of get it tapped out into the jars. But now I am going to put these to the side because I'm going to be applying them to a texture in a moment, so we're not going to need them right this second. And I'm going to bring over this texture. This is my Frozen Fractures texture stamp. I'm also going to bring over some black clay that had the scraps from the when I was tapping the metal leaf out into the jar. Some of it did spill onto the tile, so I took some black clay and just kind of mopped up those little scrap pieces and mixed them into the clay, and so it's kind of got this effect running through it. You could use just plain black clay if you wanted to. Then I'm going to grab some cornstarch and I'm going to dust off both the top of that clay and the stamp. And this is just so that it doesn't stick when I go to texture it. And I'll dust off both sides of the clay. Then just take that and place it down into the texture stamp and give it a good texture. And I'm going to be making earrings, so I'm going to need to do this twice, one for each piece of clay. I'll just show the first one, but bear in mind that you'll need to do this again if you're making a pair of earrings. And just make sure that you get a good texture going there. And then also, because this is going to be the back of my piece, I'm actually going to bring over something to texture the back. And I'm going to use this aquarium sponge. And I'm just going to use that to do the last little bit of pressing. That way both sides will be textured. This of course is optional. And just go over and make sure that you get a good texture with that, because sometimes, especially if there's some ridges in the texture stamp, it won't get caught on the first time around. So just make sure you get a good cover. Okay, then you're going to take that and you're just going to lift the clay out of that texture. And just be careful, because sometimes it does stick a little bit and you need to go at it from a different angle. There we go, and let me just show you how that looks. Quite nice. Then you just dust off that texture, not the texture, the cornstarch. And for that I'll use a baby wipe, because that will remove that cornstarch, because I really do want that removed. Okay, and just clean off the tile as well, because there'll be residue from the cornstarch there too. And I will also dust off the back to get rid of that. It's not going to get rid of all the cornstarch, but it will get rid of most of it. Okay. Then I'm going to bring over that powder from before. And also, before I do anything, I don't want to waste a lot of powder and clay. So I'm actually going to use the donut cutter that I am going to be using later. And I'm going to use that to estimate how much clay I need. And I'm going to trim away the extra clay. That way I don't end up covering more than I need, and it will just save waste. So I'll just do that, and you could also just grab those corners as well. And then this clay I would then bundle back together, roll through my pasta machine and retexture it to create the other earring. Put that to the side, because I'm not going to use that right this second. Okay, and then let me grab my brush, and I've actually lost it. There we go, found it. Now I'm just going to take that and dip that in and grab some of my flakes, and then I'm going to brush that onto the surface. Like so. And it might take a little bit of coaxing because of the cornstarch, but just continue laying that down and really just brushing it and convincing it to stick. If you're having a bit of trouble and it won't stick to the surface, you could also try applying a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to just brush away that cornstarch with your brush, and then you can go back to applying the metal leaf. Because yeah, that can happen where it causes problems, and I have a big clump of metal leaf there. I don't want that. But just continue applying it until you get a nice consistent application of that leaf. And because of the radial pattern, I am going to be going with the texture in that regard, so try to move with your texture, brushing that metal leaf down into the crevices and getting it to apply to your clay. And that should just be enough. Alright, and there, that's how that should look. And you can see how it has multiple colours flashing across the surface. Then what I'm going to do is just gently pat that down, and I'm going to grab some white acrylic paint, and I'm going to pop some of that down. Don't need a lot. And I'm just going to put that to the side, And I'll grab a little bit of that acrylic paint, and I'm just going to tap that over the surface just to highlight the texture. And I don't even want the layer of white to be fully opaque. You can actually see the metal leaf through that layer of white. And I'm just going to highlight it enough to just pick up the texture. There we go, that should do. And then I will do the same with the other piece, but that's how that looks. Okay, and then once that's all dry, just tap it down onto your work surface, bring over your cutter of choice and just center that so that that radial pattern's going around the outside, and cut and lift. I'll lift that away, bring over a blade and very quickly lift that up off the surface. You should be able to pop that middle right out. And then I'm just going to go around the edges and just tap to clean up any metal leaf fragments that might be hanging around, like there's a bit over there. Okay, and again repeat for the other earring. And there we go. Now I've just placed them on a piece of paper so that I can bake them, and this is going to get baked for half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature. The edges will probably need a little bit of a sand after baking, and then we're probably going to cover it with some resin. And here they are out of the oven. Now I have just quickly gone around with my craft knife just to kind of scrape off any little bits of foil that are on the edges, because I don't really want to sand the edges because I've got all of this metal leaf that's stuck onto the clay and I want to keep that. So just run your craft knife around to get rid of any uneven edges, and then I'm going to bring over this little silicone mat and we're going to resin these. And this is the resin that I am using. Feel free to use something like Varathane gloss varnish if you don't want to use resin. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I will apply a light layer. I want to apply only a small amount of resin because this has texture, and texture and resin generally don't mix very well, because it can cause the resin to spill over the edges. So if you have texture on a piece, you want to work with a very small amount of resin and add as you spread it out, or after you've spread it out. If it can handle it, then you add more, but otherwise I would work with a very small amount. Okay, and this will also flatten out the texture, giving it an even glass-like effect. So if you don't want that, then go with something like a gloss varnish, which will just give it a light glossy coat while keeping the texture. So that is something to bear in mind. You could also go with a matte varnish and go for a matte finish rather than a shiny finish if you wanted. Though you are going to need to seal this in some way or another, because you've got paint and you've got a lot of metal leaf just hanging out on the surface. And there we go, you can see that tiny amount of resin was more than enough to cover the surface. Then this is going to go into the UV light for about 10 minutes until the UV resin has cured, and then we're going to assemble it. Okay, and here is how that looks once it's finished with the UV light, and you can see that has left quite a nice smooth glass-like finish, and the back is textured and has hints of that metal leaf mixed throughout it. And so the next step is going to be to take a little handheld pin drill and to drill a hole at the top so that we can suspend it on our ear wire. And it shouldn't take all that much to do that. It's the first step that's always the hardest because the resin's smooth and so the drill bit doesn't really have anything to hold onto. So just give it a moment to kind of get that hole started. And then once you've got it somewhat going, it should work. Also, always drill from the resin side first because that will prevent the resin from lifting up when you're drilling, because right now I'm drilling resin down to the clay and that's pushing the resin down, whereas if you did it the opposite way you would be pushing down through the clay and pushing up through the resin, and that can lift the resin up. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're working with resin coated clay. And there we go. Alright, and then from there I'm going to use a gold head pin, gold ear wire, a little green crystal, and 2 spacer beads and a gold jump ring. And you're going to grab that head pin and you're going to place on your spacer bead, then your bead of choice. I generally would go with the colour that I want to pull from the piece, so in this case I want to bring out the greens. There's red in here, so you could use a little red bead, you could use a gold one, you could even use white to pull out the white from the pattern. So play around with the different colours, you could use multiple different colours. And you're just going to create a little loop like so. Then trim away that tail wire. Make sure to hold that piece when you're trimming it so that it doesn't ping off into anybody's eyes. And then finish up with another loop, like so. Then line those loops up. I generally just find it's easier to work with if I do that. And then you're going to grab that jump ring, pop that through the hole that you created, and again I will go resin side first because if the jump ring happens to catch, because it's a little bit small, it's not going to hook on the resin and accidentally lift it off. So just bear that in mind when working with resin. It can be kind of, if you catch it at the right angle, it can flick off. Right, and then I'll open up the base of the ear wire and place that on. There we go. And close. And there we go. That's all there is to it. I've kept it pretty simple today, and I have already done the other one, and that is just hanging out over there. And there we go, they're kind of a nice pair of Christmas earrings. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have questions, feel free to leave them down, along with suggestions for future tutorials you would like to see. And if you like the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing, as that helps the channel out. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, consider becoming a member. There's a join button just below this video. Helps the channel out and keeps it allows me to continue producing videos just like this one. Another option is my Patreon account. There is a link to that in the description below. It's the same as the YouTube membership, so both are great ways to support the channel, along with my Etsy store if you're interested in purchasing some polymer clay related supplies and tools, such as the texture stamp and cutter I used in today's video. But that is pretty much it for today's video. I do hope that you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.